Have you ever driven through a neighborhood and saw a house and said, wow, that's it. That's the house I've been looking for, but there's no for sale sign on the front lawn? Well, that doesn't mean you can't approach the buyer and see if they'd like to sell. Our real estate expert, Louie Ortiz, is here today to talk about something that we're labeling house stalking. Is that what they label it in the industry?
Yeah. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. So I remember this in my old neighborhood in Georgia. It was a nice little neighborhood, and it kind of became a thing in the neighborhood where people would drive through, and if they saw a house they liked, they just put a note in the mailbox and say, hey, I know there's no for sale sign, but would you ever consider selling? I love your house.
Yeah.
And a lot of homes were sold that way.
Absolutely, sure. Well, buyers are getting really creative right now because the interest rates are so low, interest rates are low, inventory is low. Buyers are getting very creative with ways to house stock to find homes that are not on the market.
So how would you start?
A lot of different techniques. One of the real common ways is there's a lot of real estate websites that have mapping tools. But what a lot of people also don't know is that there's a lot of mapping tools that have bird's eye views. So if they're looking for a specific neighborhood, they can actually get a satellite view of the area, do kind of a fly view and look for areas. That's one technique they're using.
So actually using satellite photos is like
to find an area.
House spying.
Yeah. And then once they do that, they might consider going and maybe doing a little door knocking to see if that owner is interested in selling.
I guess if you're not ashamed to cold call.
Yeah, or cold calling. Yeah, I mean,
you can do it.
Absolutely. There's websites out there where you can research the owners once you know the address, and you can try and do that as well. Another technique is sometimes they're writing a little letter and they're saying, hey, would you like to sell your home?
Yeah, like I said, I've seen those, drop right in the mailboxes.
Yeah.
No postage or anything, just stick it right in there.
Yeah.
How many homes do you suppose in San Diego are being sold this way?
Well, there was a statistic recently that that from 15% to 20% in 2000, from 11 to 12, homes that were sold that were not used by a real estate agent were actually contacted by the buyer directly. So it's up 5% from the previous year.
All right, so let's say you find a home that you really like. You drop a note in the mailbox or however you contact them, you walk up and you knock on the door and the person says, yeah, I'd be willing to talk.
Sure.
Now, how do you take it from there? I mean, how do you research what price that house might be worth?
Sure.
How do you go from the point of contact to actually working through a deal?
Right. Well, in that instance, it might be a good idea to contact a real estate agent, or they
That's
might.
what I was thinking.
Yeah, because it's a big investment, and to do it, without help, the real estate agent can do some research on that and find out the values. There's a lot of websites as well, but really a real estate agent can very well provide that information.
Now, if you find the home and you've got an interested buyer and seller, and there's been no real estate agent involved so far, so there's been no listing or anything like that, what would the real estate agent's role be? Reasonably, what could you expect them to do, and what would that cost you? Would it be a full commission situation?
Well, it really depends on the real estate agent. There are some discount brokerages and things that might be able to handle the transaction. Sometimes an escrow company might be able to do that. I actually personally purchased a property that way a few years ago, many years ago actually, so it can be done.
Okay, so again, you can do this on your own, but
Absolutely.
You can also approach a real estate agent and say,
Sure.
hey, look, I need some help. That's negotiable too, I suppose.
Absolutely.
At that point. I mean, you got a deal here. You just
Absolutely.
have to help us work it out.
Absolutely. And there are a couple of other techniques. One of the things that buyers are doing is also looking at homes that were leased, and maybe those owners want to sell. Another strategy that some buyers are using is trying to purchase a property, maybe with delayed possession. Maybe that seller would like to sell the home, but they want to stay in that property a while. If the buyer has the means to do so, they could actually purchase the property and then rent it back to that seller so they could stay there for a while.
Yeah, and again, I've heard of this before. I've heard of deals even going so far as saying you can live in it for the rest of your life.
Sure.
We're interested in it when you no longer have use for it.
If they really want that house, those are some techniques that buyers are using right now.
Interesting. All right. If you have any questions, you can give Louie Ortiz a call. You can check out our website here, and we'll hook you up with Louie. It's great to see you, Louie.
Great to see you, Mark.
As always.
Thanks.
Interesting. All right.